everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, and I am thrilled to be focused on the intersection between human behavior and AI, and talking to a really interesting founder who's just started their journey and, looking at some of the ways that you can differentiate yourself in this sea of a very rapid technological advancement. And so without further ado, Toby Sinclair. Welcome.
Hey, Rachel. How you doing?
Great.
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about your background, what you're up to now, what you're excited about.
Hey, so I'm the founder of a product called Real Talk Studio, where we're focused on making hard conversations easier with AI. I'm a people pleaser, and I've always struggled with difficult conversations around conflict, giving bad news, handling challenging feedback. So I kind of created the product for myself, but I'm just overall just really curious about how technology, in particular artificial intelligence, can just help us with these really difficult, awkward, challenging conversations, which I think you are as well too. So we've got that shared interest, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. So I'm curious to hear, because you have had a lot of other roles in some very, very large institutions in the past before striking out on your own. So what are some of the biggest learnings you've had or you've taken away from your roles in employee experience?
Yeah, good questions. Yeah, so before doing my startup, I was in a very large, well-known investment bank in the US. Was there for just over a decade. During that time, I worked as an employee experience director and worked all the way across the employee life cycle, from recruitment to onboarding to talent development to offboarding and everything in between. I think the biggest challenge was just around the key thing is in that word experience, and often the experience for a lot of employees was that it wasn't a great experience. It was fragmented, the processes were confusing, and internally a lot of the organization maybe didn't come together in the right way to deliver a great experience. New hire being a great one, where you need your HR, your technology, your real estate, security, all these people to come together to make sure that it's a really successful first day. A lot of the time that experience was just not where it needed to be. So yeah, I kind of just learned that how hard it is, especially at these really large organizations, to deliver great experiences across that employee life cycle is super challenging.
Were you there in this role over COVID?
Yeah.
How hybrid had the workplace been before COVID for you? And then how much did it change kind of everything?
Yeah, so prior to COVID, working in like a massive company like that, a lot of the time you're spending on video calls. So a lot of the communication mechanism, I guess, was via video and stuff, which meant that when we went to COVID, it wasn't a massive shift in terms of behaviors. It was just that rather than being on video calls in the office, you're on video calls at home, which, to be honest, a lot of employees were probably happy about, because it was always that thing, even before COVID, of why am I going into the office just to sit on calls for 6, 7, 8 hours a day? It's a valid argument, right? So when people moved from home, it was probably like, well, I'm doing the same kind of work, but it means that I can be at home with my family and all of that kind of stuff, right? I think one of the things that was definitely interesting when COVID hit from an employee experience perspective was how rapidly some of the agendas and programs sped up during that period of time. So prior to that, I was actually involved in a project of rolling out Zoom to the organization. I think at the time there was like a several months, if not year, roadmap to kind of get it rolled out to the company. When COVID hit, it suddenly went from being 12 months worth of work to like 12 days, because that was kind of like that urgency came in, and suddenly all of the technology landscape for the employee experience rapidly improved, which was really fascinating, just to kind of show that when the right factors and conditions are in place, change can happen very, very quickly inside what was traditionally a kind of bureaucratic, slow-moving organization. Suddenly that catalyst was there and change happened really quickly.
That's so interesting. And it makes a lot of sense, and I think technology in general, and yes, by extension, AI, has accelerated its primary role, I think, in connecting and facilitating different experiences and relationships within organizations, like now more so than ever. And that's just got to have been a really interesting experience as someone who was in charge of designing, right? These experiences.
Yeah, and I think another thing that was interesting, the change, was that my role, this was the really good part of the role, is I traveled around the world, South America, North America, many times, Asia. So did a lot of travel and did a lot of in-person sessions. And I can remember when the lockdown happened, I had like quite a long agenda of different workshops, sessions that was going to be running around the world. So then had to kind of think, how do I now create an engaging experience for 20 senior leaders in a fully remote experience, and not just for like an hour. These were like multi-day sort of nights, workshops. How do you then create an environment? So I remember spending many hours with a colleague figuring out how we might use whiteboarding tools, how we were going to do Zoom breakouts, because it sounds funny now, but at the time Zoom breakouts was quite a novel thing that everyone was getting used to.
Yep.
So it was interesting to try and bring together all of these pieces in a kind of virtual space and create engaging experiences. I think what I learned from that was that you can do it if you kind of put the right pieces of the puzzle in place. And I think good facilitation of those meetings, whether it's in person or remotely, if you do follow the right principles, you can create very engaging experiences.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And it makes a ton of sense. So switching tracks a little bit now, focusing on this business that you've started, Real Talk Studios. How do you foresee distinct, like there's been it's interesting because on the one hand, it's amazing that these advancements in AI have made it possible for so many people to say, I have an idea and I'm going to build it myself, right? That's amazing. How do you distinguish your platform from other Gen AI products?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the things we're very much focused on is AI video. So I've been experimenting with AI products for probably 2-3 years. Even when I was at the bank, we built an AI product for onboarding. So I built AI products in the corporate world, but coming out, I'd kind of experimented over the years whilst I was kind of having a bit of a side hustle, kind of figuring out kind of different ways to use AI products. Originally, one of the products I had was like text-based, a sort of chatbot.
Yeah.
Engagement was very poor. We found that the kind of feedback, the kind of length of sessions was quite short. The detail that was added was short, and I think that's because a lot of us have been trained to be very concise with like messages, and it's not always a great experience typing. So then we kind of experimented with voice, found some interesting enhancements there. And then what I personally just got really fascinated with over the last probably 6 months or so is video technology. So one of the ways in which we're trying to differentiate now is say we're just video first. So we've got a lot of clients that have asked us for more of a text-based interaction or voice only, but we've kind of gone down the point to say, well, we will just want to be really, really good at video-based role plays. And that's one of the ways we're trying to differentiate at the moment is real-time AI video conversations with hopefully realistic avatars.
How have you found? I have found that the real-time AI avatar generation is just not there yet. Have you found anything different?
Yeah. So there are mixed experiences with using the kind of real-time avatars. The ones we're using, I think one of the things I look for from user feedback is a sense of emotion. And what we are finding is people get frustrated in a positive way, not necessarily because of the avatar, but they feel in a sense of frustration, confusion, challenge which we hadn't seen when we were in, say, the text mode, for example. We're seeing these kind of emotions come out. People are getting like saying this, like I did one on Monday, a user session, and they said that I hate this person. And it wasn't because it was glitchy. It was just like they'd created some kind of relationship because they could see the person. It maybe didn't help that the gentleman was like an older guy in a suit in an office. So I think all of that visual cues had kind of set up the scenario and added an extra layer to it. So I think that's the good thing, is just the visual aspects. Talking to an avatar, it creates a more realistic experience. The challenges with real-time video avatars at the moment, one is that you've got to be in a quiet environment, really. So one of the things with text, you can be on the bus, in the supermarket, where you can just do it on the go. With the video avatars, it takes more of a quiet environment for you to have those conversations. The other thing is the emotional range of the video avatars isn't great at the moment either. I had another client where we were doing a scenario and they were saying, can you make it hit its fist on the table and then walk out the room? Not yet, but I believe in the very near future that kind of interaction is going to be possible. So I've kind of accepted that with the video avatars there are some constraints, but from what I'm seeing, the rate of improvement is very fast. So I think in the future it's going to be the kind of prime, at least for learning based scenarios, which is where we're operating. I think that's going to be a big part of the learner's experience.
Yeah. It's interesting because there have been, AR, VR, immersive learning experience for a while. It's so funny that, AI has really almost overshadowed those technologies in its ease of application. It's like realistic, kind of human-like qualities. I don't know if you've found this, but I find there is such a gap now with all the media that has been promoting AI and like the amazing demos we see and like the amazing capabilities. And then when people actually try it out and have an experience where like maybe the delay in responding is like half a second longer than you would expect from a human or whatever. And it's just like the level of expectation is actually higher than the expected average performance of any of these AI applications. Like, do you have to manage that a little bit?
Yeah. So what we do is we try and set the expectations with our clients that this is a training environment. And I think that's what helps with our products, is that this is role play. We're not recreating the conversation. So I think that affords a level of where it's not super accurate, but it's accurate enough is probably what we aim for. We do kind of, when users go through the role plays, we kind of set it up to say this is obviously an AI. It might be buggy. It might respond in different ways. One of the things we've also done is told people, if it sounds stupid, but if the AI isn't responding how you want it, just tell it to like slow down or guide it in a certain way, which can really help as well.
Right.
I think one of the other products which I saw is like there's this thing called Bordy now, which is going around LinkedIn, this thing you can call and talk to. What's interesting when you phone, I think just for the first time, I don't know if it does every time, is it'll say like, just to let you know, I'm an AI, I'm still in development, I might interrupt you, I might do some weird stuff. So that's another thing we've done, is kind of just add some of those caveats just to kind of temper them expectations, I guess.
Right.
Because you're right, often, especially with the video layer, it can be, the bar is quite high. Yeah.
I always just think it's so funny, because then sometimes it's like, I want to remind, you have to kind of constantly be reminding people that, it's technology. It's not a human. And it's funny because in some ways, sometimes the AI is just so much more intelligent than your average person. And so you actually have to like dumb the AI down a little bit in how it might like respond to like feedback, if that's one of the challenging conversations you're handling. I don't know if you've experienced that, but it's just the expectation versus reality conversation is really an interesting one, I think, especially because people are in some ways being set up to expect a lot more than what is actually possible, especially when we're talking about conversations that are being generated in real time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's interesting going back to the virtual reality. I also did do a lot of work. This was 2020 around the COVID time with virtual reality and coaching.
Mm.
So I did a lot of stuff. I actually had a group at one stage, which was like a community around VR coaching. What I found with that was the cognitive load was just too great for clients. So I had this kind of phrase at the time, which was like VR fluency, which was if you were working with someone that had like a high fluency in VR, they used it a lot, they played a lot of games, and they were very familiar with it. They could put the headset on quickly and get straight into the conversation. For those that hadn't used VR much or were new to it, when their fluency was quite low, the cognitive load was just so distracting that what's this thing on my head? What are these gear sticks? Or what's that over there? To do any kind of meaningful work with them was just a waste of time, really. So I actually found that when clients wanted to do work in VR, I would say to them, like, over the next 6 weeks, go and play mini golf, go and play some games. Once you feel comfortable, come back and we can actually do work together in there. The problem is most people didn't come back because it also requires a degree, I guess, of like behavior change and habit formation to get to that point. Whereas contrast that to my experience now with artificial intelligence and like video technology is the behavior change isn't that great. The experience of talking to one of our interactive avatars is similar to what we're doing now, which lowers that barrier, lowers that kind of cognitive load of this being different. You obviously still spot the differences in the avatar, which is good because it's kind of like the ethical and transparent thing to do. So you actually do know it's an AI. Which means that it's just much more accessible than at the time the VR just wasn't and still isn't, to be honest, accessible to most people.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I remember during like the early days of COVID when people, I think, were really trying to recreate that like more full-bodied immersive experience or whatever versus the two-dimensional one. And I agreed with you to your point of behavior change and how hard it is to get people to change habits voluntarily, right? Like if there's like a real neat, like COVID was a perfect example, right? Video was not very popular before, and now it's a go-to channel of communication. But it was forced in like a wild way across the globe, right? The way that we've like almost never seen before, for our generation at least. And so I think in the workflow, learning or in the workflow, coaching and feedback is the optimal goal because then you're not even requiring people to do anything extra, right?
Yeah. And what we found with our product is what works best. I guess it's probably similar to you, is that it works well when it's combined with other, like the students are part of a program or there's some other wraparound learning, which creates that accountability. When I first started with our product, and even now we're kind of experimenting. We had like one, which is where you as an individual could go use the product. Found the uptake was very low on that. Because again, I think without that kind of you're part of a program or an experience, the incentive maybe isn't there unless you're kind of just intrinsically curious about becoming a better conversationalist. So we tend to find it works best if it's in like some kind of wraparound you're part of a leadership development program or something like that is generally where we see it work best.
Yep, same, absolutely same. The positioning of it is critical. So I'm curious. I like to ask all AI founders about where they see AI really excelling without reducing that human touch or that human quality that is really like why we're doing anything. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so what springs to mind is when we've kind of spoke to clients and kind of gone through our products, something that's come up a few times is so our product basically helps people practice difficult conversations through kind of role play and those kind of things. So it's kind of meant as like a learning aid and a training support. What some clients have asked us for is they don't want the training, they just want the script. So don't teach me how to have a better conversation. Just give me the scripts that I need to have to go do the conversation. And I think what we're trying to promote is, I'm kind of very much in more of, this is a learning tool to help the human find the answers versus me just give you the answer and you just read from a script. What's interesting with that is, when I think about my startup, you've probably heard this kind of phrase, like, are you selling a vitamin or a painkiller? The learning can often be the vitamin of, like, I'm saying, like, here's your vitamins, do your exercise, and then you get better at your conversations. Problem is, most things that sell well are really the painkillers.
Right.
The script, right? I don't want to I don't want to do the 100 press ups to get a six pack. Just give me the six pack. Which really, in my mind, is the script, right? Just, or even more so, have the send an AI and have the conversation for me, so I don't even need to have the conversation at all. Where we're heading, I guess, with some of these advancements is, I believe there will be a number of solutions that come in that are actually the script or the replacement for the human. So you don't even need to have it. Now, where that makes me uncomfortable is, again, in kind of space we're operating around, really important employee conversations. You can imagine the scenario where some manager's freaked out by telling people they're redundant, so sends an avatar to the employee to have the conversation for them. That feels like the wrong thing to do, but also feels, in the future, very technically easy to do. So yeah, I don't know. At the moment, from a values-based perspective, we're very much focused on the enablement, but I am also in this kind of conflict that isn't always what sells, or what isn't always the painkiller solution, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really tough. Like early on, because our focus, at least from the coaching side, is on the nonverbals, right? And the delivery and a lot of those behavioral aspects of communication, in addition to what you say. A lot of people, especially investors, like early on, were like, this is great, but what about just removing the human? Like, what about just couldn't you just, like, use the same technology to develop these, like, highly behaviorally intelligent, like, AI avatars or whatever? And I just deep fake on top of a person. It's similar to the eye gaze redirect, and the issue I have with that, right, is like, I believe that the conversations and the communication is that intrinsically human thing, and that a human wants to talk to another human, and they want to know for sure that that's a real person, and that's how that person's really showing up, right? Like, I don't want to get the idea that, oh, I'm talking to Toby, but Toby's in his pajamas right now and he's got like a deep fake suit on, right? I'm like, I want to know what your reality is like a little bit, right? It's trust, it's rapport building. And I think, we're very set on that. I don't think we would ever want to have our product be replacing versus amplifying human connection.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
But it is a question that comes up a lot. And I think there will have to be, I think, some very strong value sets that keep the human in the loop in a very strong way, even though there is a big tug to, like, have the bots do the meeting, right? And just have my bot talk to your bot, and I get it. There's some efficiencies there, but at the end of the day, I'm like, what are we even doing?
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is we're at the stage where all of these things are technically possible. So it becomes more of like a value-based decision, or ethics, moral decision around what you do and don't want to do. The challenge is just that many of us just want the painkiller, the shortcut. And as we know, building like strong, meaningful relationships takes time and effort, which is why when we think about conversations, so many of our hard conversations are avoided, is because they're really difficult. So will we decide that actually the 100 sit-ups is worth it to get that better conversation? Or if a solution comes along that actually means you don't need to put the hard effort in and actually can find a shortcut? It is fascinating.
Right. Yeah. TBD, very much TBD on that. So for this last question, I I'm very impressed with the following you have on LinkedIn. I think it's very engaged and you've got a great kind of banter with your community. So how do you, like, I'm just curious how you structure your content and how you think about constantly or consistently providing value to your audience.
I'm at this. I go through roller coasters, but I'm at the phase where I like hate LinkedIn.
Totally, I totally get it.
I like sometimes I'm like okay with it. Other time. So at the moment I'm in the hate LinkedIn. So all of my opinions at the moment might be mixed on that. I think one of the things which is interesting though is I've been posting on LinkedIn probably every weekday for about 5 years, 6 years maybe, consistently. When I started posting on LinkedIn, it was more of a learning journey, a journal. So it was more about, I would read a book, I would share some insights, I'd read an article, I'd share some insights, I'd try something out, I'd share something. So it was more about me building a learning habit. And I found it really good as a way to kind of do that. You read a book and then it's an accountability partner to share it, because you get the dopamine hit of someone liking it, sharing it, saying thank you. And so it kind of incentivized my learning. Since I've become a business owner, I'm in this real tussle at the moment of sharing learning content isn't necessarily enough to win clients, but then selling too much on LinkedIn doesn't then also win clients. So this is maybe why the reason I said I hate LinkedIn, or I'm in this kind of challenge mode of how do I operate LinkedIn as a business? I don't know at the moment. So a lot of, which is interesting because a lot of the following I think has come because I was sharing interesting content that was useful, but that doesn't necessarily convert to the customers that I want to now get. And unfortunately, I know it sounds bad to say, but sort of monetize or turn into clients.
Right.
So I'm in that mode now where I'm kind of lost a little bit. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's so funny. My issue with LinkedIn is that it can feel so trumpety, you're just like trumpeting, like whatever. And like everyone's like engaging with the content in a way that sometimes it's really meaningful. And that's what's so great, is that you can, like, there are so many relationships that I've sparked on LinkedIn, that have become partnerships or whatever. And it's awesome. But then so much of it is like just so surface level. And I think, the thing that I've been challenged with is I don't post every day. I post like once a week. Right. And it's interesting because I have, I think you also follow Roberto Ferraro.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've definitely interacted with some of his posts because I've been tagged them as well. And he is a machine. It's so amazing. Like, he's so incredible with his content. He's like posting so frequently. I'm like, is this your full-time job? And I know it's not. I'm like so impressed because I'm like, I just like at the end of the day, I just like can't, It's bad because I'm like, I should, but it's very impressive. Do you still post once a day?
Yeah. Once every weekday. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's, like I said, I'm kind of in this mode of like, I don't want to be too trumpety, but I actually put a post on there a couple of weeks ago about my dilemma with sales and the whole of like, how much do I share content about my business? And then it's like that tradition, that stereotypical thing of like, someone said, well, if you don't shout about it, no one will.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's like just incorrect conventional wisdom sort of thing. Because it feels like yes and no. So then I'm like, should I share more about just me as a person? Because again, especially in the B2B space, I think people buy from people.
Yeah. Maybe more about like your continued learning journey now as a fan.
Yeah. But then it's kind of like, is that gonna, because again, it's like, I think on my LinkedIn I have a lot of followers, but maybe not a lot of potential buyers.
Yeah.
Like, again, conventional wisdom would say convert those followers might buy from you, and there's all this thing about get 100 fans and all of this kind of stuff, but it's all of it. I guess what I've found is it's a lot easier said than done.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's easy to have these sort of like cute statements and stuff, but in reality, it's much more complex. I think the last thing I would say on LinkedIn that I'm also really struggling with is more around the prospecting side, sending DMs, outreach type stuff.
Yeah.
So again, conventional wisdom, what the LinkedIn gurus will say to you is post every day. People will love it. They'll come to you. Your inbox will be flooded with inbound requests and you'll be a millionaire. Hasn't worked for me yet. So when I started my business, I was like, I never really done like outbound outreach via LinkedIn DMs or anything. So when I started my business, I was like, well, I better start doing it. It's bloody miserable. It's like send, I don't know, 100 messages. I get like, I think I put a post the other day, I get like 30-40% response rate, which isn't too bad.
Yeah.
And converting that into actually a sale or a meeting or whatever it might is even a smaller percent. So I'm now also in that mode of, okay, so do I just get the bots on it, which I know a lot of people do, and just automate the hell out of it? And instead of sending 100 messages a week, send 10,000 and then a percentage of a percentage? Do I give up completely and just pick up the telephone and go to like, it's somewhere in between?
Yeah. Yeah. The cold outreach numbers are like kind of horrible.
Yeah. And I hate, one of the things I hate, which is a muscle I'm having to develop, is the chase, the follow up. Because it's I send a message, say to you, Rachel, and you don't respond. And then I leave it a couple of days and it's burning in the back of my mind of like, oh, I need to, what do I say? Do I want to seem too pushy? So I follow up again and guess what? You don't respond again.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, do I follow up again?
Yeah.
How often do you do it? And all of that, especially if you're not doing it in an automated way with a tool, or that process of just following up, just keeping track of all the people I've messaged. And there have been a number of times where you might follow up a second or a third time and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, I was away or I was busy or yeah, really interested. So it does show that there is value in the follow-up, but doing that consistently and keeping on top of it all, really hard.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've actually found that with this business, communication upskilling, conversation practice, like, that whole space, I have found that buyers are very obvious. Like, you can say your bit about the value that this platform adds, and people are either like, yes, I get it, I agree, and I agree this is a value, and then or they'll be like, okay, but how do you measure like good communication? And I'm like, okay, so I can't educate someone. Like, I don't find that it's my role to educate someone on like why communication is important. Like I need to find people who are like, absolutely, communication is important, right? And then we can have a conversation around that. That's what I found. I found it's a total waste of time to try to convince someone that communication and the way you communicate is critical to any business success, literally whatsoever,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
that's been kind of my thinking on that.
But this is all like a muscle or skill that I've had to. It was interesting, obviously. Again, everyone says it, but starting my business, this is all, building the product is easy. Figuring all that stuff out is quite challenging. Yeah,
totally. And I think even more so now, right? Like there was a time when building something in technology or building a software actually was like very expensive, required millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And that was the hard part because there was so much less competition in the space that you could, if you built it, then like, you had a huge moat. And now it's the opposite. Like sales is the competitive advantage. Cutting through the noise, it's impossible. It's so hard. You can have an amazing product, but if there's someone with like a louder voice or more dollars for marketing, I don't know, it's really hard to get the attention.
Yeah, and all the channels are so there's so many people doing the same thing on the same channel. It's hard,
totally. But anyways, we'll persevere. And, I think what you're doing is very important. Toby, thank you for sharing your thoughts on from employee experience to founding this AI company and, social media and LinkedIn. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think one thing I would just share is be curious. So I think I was at a session at a university earlier in the week, and they asked for my one piece of advice that I would give to the students. And I think it's just follow your curiosity. And that's what I'm really happy to be doing now, having kind of left my corporate career, doing my startup, is I can just follow my curiosity. And right now it's in the sort of AI video technology space and around difficult conversations. In the future, it might pivot to something else. But I think what all of this kind of AI technology brings to us is just that for someone that's super curious about all these things, it's like a bit of a playground to go and explore and have fun stuff, do fun stuff with. So yeah, just don't be too fearful. Just embrace the curiosity and go learn.
Yeah, awesome. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, as we talked about, post on there every weekday. So Toby Sinclair on LinkedIn, and also realtalkstudio.com is where you can go and practice the conversations you fear the most.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Toby. And as always, thanks to our audience. We'll see you next time.
See you later.